up. It should be up, right? So no more jokes down. That's what I like to do. So we can't
Mess around. Okay. So leave them on. Okay. Hot mic.
let's go.
Well, good evening. Welcome to the 2022 Narragansett Town Council Candidate Forum. My name's Dennis Lynch. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Narragansett Peer Residents Association. And I'm joined here tonight by a fellow board member, Kevin McKenna. We'll be asking the questions tonight of the candidates that have joined us. The NPRA, as we're known, is a neighborhood organization that's dedicated to preserving the quality of life in our town and preserving the unique character of the town as well. We're pleased to say that as a result of our most recent membership drive, we now have 105 households as active members. This is the largest number of households to date for our membership. One of the most important activities of our association is hosting candidate forums during election years. Some may remember 2 years ago that we needed to resort to Zoom forum, but nevertheless, we were able to have candidates get their positions on important issues on the record, which in turn allowed Narragansett voters to be better informed as they approach the ballot box. Tonight, we're excited to host this live event, and we welcome as well all of those watching on YouTube. It's important to note that our practice has always been to invite all candidates to participate in our forums. We believe any candidate running for elected office has an implied obligation to articulate his or her position in as many venues as possible, certainly at live events. And we believe the forum tonight is the only live event where all town residents can hear from the candidates running for town council. Of the 3 candidates who chose not to participate this evening, only one, Alicia Vignali Henry, offered a reason, and that was that she was out of country. So let's proceed. This evening, we will commence with candidate introductions, followed by sets of questions, a portion of which will require 2-minute response or maximum of 2-minute responses. And then other questions will be looking for a faster, more concise answer. We'll conclude the evening by allowing each candidate to provide a summary of why they're seeking office. These questions were not shared with the candidates in advance. We ask the audience to not react or applaud during the question and response period. So we're going to commence, and we're going to start with Bob at the other end for candidate introductions, to give you that opportunity. First up.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, everyone, for coming out on kind of a dreary night. I'm Bob Patterson. I am running for town council. I want to start by thanking the current council for all they've done in the last 2 years in restoring order and civility to the process. Put aside any decision they made, the process is so much better than it had been 2 years before that, and I want to thank them for that. Everyone who runs brings something to the table, their life experiences, their background. My background is that of a lawyer. I've been a corporate lawyer for 40 years. Most recently, I headed up the commercial legal department for Citizens Bank. Before that, I was the head of the general counsel of a couple of investment banking firms. I was head of global compliance for Legg Mason, a lawyer at the SEC, where I met my wife, Mary, and an assistant DA in Manhattan. I have, as a result of that, a legal and financial background that I think might help on the council if I have the opportunity to serve. But more important than any of that, I've been a husband for 31 years. I am a father of 3 very accomplished daughters and a grandfather. I also am not running as an endorsed candidate. I respect the decision of those of my colleagues who decided to seek an endorsement. I decided not to, which means that if I am lucky enough to be elected, I will answer to only you and no one else. Thank you for your time. Look forward to answering the questions this evening.
Thank you, Bob. Lori?
Thank you again for having this
forum to give the candidates an opportunity to speak to the public. My name is Lori Kelly. I know that most of you know me from my work on the library board for years. I am running this time, as I ran last time, for democracy, because while this current council has done a very good job, the previous council and the previous councilman, Matt Mannix and Jill Lawler, ignored the will of the people. For 4 years, we had to have 2 different votes on something that the people had decided. So I believe very strongly that the people and the voters are above the council, and the councilmen should serve the people. And that is my entire reason for running in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Matt?
My name's Matt Mannix. I'm a native of this beautiful town. I attended Monsignor Clark and Narragansett High School, had wonderful experience at both places, and that led me to graduate from Princeton with honors and go on to law school. I served on the town council here in Narragansett for most of the last decade. There were nicer times. Many here in the pier remember when I led the effort to keep the deep water cable off of the town beach, preventing economic and environmental harms that would have wrecked our beach season. It's hard to believe that was 10 years ago. The town had long waited for a homestead exemption. I worked with our state rep and traveled to the State House 3 times to advocate for and testify for the homestead to be implemented here. Special interests had blocked that reform for many years. We broke through that blockade. I'm also proud that I presided over or was an integral part of the hiring of 3 qualified and competent town managers. We switched the focus from that position being one of political allegiance to getting a true operations manager in that role. Not a troublemaker who just stepped into town or swooped in, or I'm not a special interest pawn. I'm a Narragansett native with a track record to protect our town and put Narragansett families first. Thank you.
Jill?
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you to the peer residents, those in attendance, and those watching at home, and the candidates who chose to come today. I had a speech planned, but when I learned today that potentially up to 400 college students have registered to vote in the town of Narragansett, I've changed my speech. I think it's important for the town to understand that, sure, all elections have consequences, but the consequences for this election are the health and the wealth of our town. We could lose our town if a council is elected that will go along with a PAC. Correct, a PAC, a political organization for the landlords, has been formed. You'll see the signs all around town. They're advocating for 5 council people to be voted on that they believe will help to achieve their goals. Now, they can't vote here because they don't live here. They're out-of-state landlords. So they were able to figure out how they could vote in town. And how they could vote in town was to get the college students to register to vote, which they have. So today I come here as someone who is, yes, interested in our town for many other reasons. But if this election, we have 400 college students vote, what's going to happen the next few years? Is it going to be up to 8,000? Because that's how many live in the town. Are we going to allow the University of Rhode Island students to govern our town? It's our time now to make sure that we have 5 people that are not on that sign elected to this council who will look out for your best interests, the town's best interests, so we can have a community, so that we can have neighbors in our neighborhoods, not transients. I am not against college students.
Jill,
I am not against summer rentals. Thank you, Dennis.
Deb?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Deb Kopek. I am the only person, except for Eva here, who's actually on the town council at the moment. Thank you to the Narragansett Peer Residents Association for this opportunity to speak to neighbors, friends, residents, and constituents at this forum. I've worked tirelessly to examine, research, and understand the issues of our town government, and sometimes make very difficult decisions after sober deliberation. I began this town council journey spending several weeks meeting with all of the departmental directors to understand the many aspects of town government from the inside out. Those meetings were invaluable. If elected, I intend to continue to study, among others, the following town issues: climate mitigation, including water and sewer infrastructure improvements, completing the community choice aggregation project to provide more renewable energy to our electrical grid, and hopefully reducing the cost of electricity, identify solutions to mitigate the issue of migrating sand on the town beach, see the library project through to completion, and working toward resolution of Galilee issues. Again, my thanks to NPRA for inviting me.
Once again, thank you, Dennis, for having this interesting forum. It's always informative. Little history on myself. My family goes back to about 1945 in Narragansett when we had an uncle that purchased a house in the Scarborough Hills area. And it was the best thing that happened to my family. We were able to come down here in the summer. Several years later, in 1960, my parents were able to purchase the property, and that's where we all started. I have several, brother and a sister that's also moved down over the years, and we enjoy it here. And my biggest issue is the quality of life. I think we moved down. It was a great quality of life. The summertime, we have the summer and the beaches and all. And as far as my business background, I've been a business development manager and a salesman in the automotive aftermarket division. I basically worked with all kinds of customers, small businesses, small mom and pops, up to the large, big box stores. You may have seen me advocating at some council meetings. Last 20 years ago, since I've been living here, I've been spending a lot of time at the council meetings. And even before then, I can remember back in the mid 80s, late 80s, when Black Point wanted to build condos there, and I was involved in it also then. I'm glad to see that the town had purchased that property. Excuse me, the state had purchased that property. So that's what I'm about. It's still going? Okay. More about the quality of life, and thank you for having me.
I'm just setting my timer.
Yeah.
So thank you for NPRA for organizing this, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I know it's drier weather. I am currently serving on the council. It's my first term on the council. It's been a tough 2 years, but it's been great, and I've been honored and privileged to serve the residents in the town. Just a little bit about me as my background. I'm a first generation Polish American. I grew up in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I ended up going to the University of Rhode Island, and I graduated from the College of Pharmacy back in '91, and I was able to live down the line, and I fell in love with Narragansett. It was always my goal to own a property here, and that dream came true in 1996. However, I moved away. 3 months later, I had a great job opportunity in Germany. And I'm lucky I went there because that's where I met my amazing husband, who many of you know. And I made my way back here in 2008, living here full time. I did rent my house out year round because I believe in the fabric of the community. And I wanted to maintain, just the non-transiency. And when I did move back, we settled in and we became active in our community, in our church. And so now I'm happy to serve the community. And I did run 2 years ago to bring back civility and transparency. No ulterior motives other than serving in this capacity, other than being a voice for the people in the town. And I just noticed I went over, so I'm sorry. But I'll finish in my closing statements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eva. So, and actually, we're going to start with you, so we'll give you an opportunity to jump right back in. We're going to ask questions of all seven, the same question to all seven of the candidates. We're asking the candidates to have a response of no more than 2 minutes. If you choose to be under 2 minutes, there's no penalty for that. So however you want to sort of construct the response. So, and we're going to go down the line, and then we'll skip and have a method of doing that. So starting with Eva, the town's ordinance regarding the 3-student rental limit has been placed on hold by a judge's ruling. If elected, would you support upholding this ordinance? What actions would you take if the town loses the case?
Thank you for the question. So as you may know, that was one of the issues that was a very hot topic for our council, was the 3-student ordinance. When I campaigned the last election, I was open to the 4-student. I thought we could figure out a way. When I got on council, I listened to the residents, I listened to the landlords, I listened to the students, I listened to everybody. And I think it was very surprising to me as well that I decided that the 3-student ordinance was what was best for this town. And that kind of caused quite a bit of backlash, and I did get accused of not adhering to my campaign promises. However, when there is new information, new data that comes forth, I am a pharmacist, so I am a scientist, so I look for that. So I was a little bit disappointed when we finally pushed through the 3-student. We thought it was all set. And we just recently heard that it was there's a stay on it. As a council member, if elected, I still would like to see that stay move forward, and I would like to see that enforced. If it is overruled, I do want to seek further action, further litigation, and taking it to the next level of litigation.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, I do support the 3-student ordinance. I think it's very critical and integral in the town to at least get something that brings some balance back into the town. There's a little bit of a legacy with the ordinance itself. If people remember, it was passed in 2020. And previous to that, it upheld a Supreme Court challenge in City of Providence that went right to the Supreme Court. So the actual ordinance itself, the mechanics of it are stable and they're fine. The first time, as many people remember, it was knocked down because of a technicality in a letting people speak in some of the ordinances. So the second one, this is a little bit more interesting, but I support the ordinance, and I would further say I would defend the ordinance also as far as if I get elected to reinstituting the ordinance. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Deb?
This is so interesting because I always follow Eva in town council meetings, and she often says things that I was planning on saying, and that happened just now. I also voted in favor of the 3-student ordinance. After a great deal of research, I studied a lot about how we came to this issue historically, what the University of Rhode Island did and did not do to support the students who lived down the line. And I came up thinking that, in a town where there are more students here than there are living on campus at the University of Rhode Island, that's a problem. And it's the reason why, it's one of the 2 main reasons why I supported that. The other was that contrary to the kinds of things that some of the opponents to this say, this is not a single neighborhood issue. This is an issue that occurs throughout the entire town. I get emails, Eva gets emails very frequently from a lot of people who have just lost their quality of life as a result of the neighborhoods that they lived in long before some of these things happened. So at this point, I'm not sure what would happen if the judge votes against us. I guess we have to start again somehow, and so we will. And I think that's how I feel. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Jill?
So in 2020, I was one of the council members that did vote for the 3-student ordinance. And should the judge overturn the ruling, I would seek to further it. It should be noted that the same judge saw a technicality the first time in 2020, and she's looking at it again now. So I'm hoping that she will see her best to rule by the town. Steve mentioned that Providence also has the 3-student ordinance in effect, and it is constitutionally correct. I saw in the news today that Providence is looking to actually expand the 3-student ordinance throughout the entire city. It's currently only in certain areas. And the reason for that is not because of the rowdiness of the students, it's because of the lack of housing currently in Providence. And that's what we have here. We have a lack of year-round housing in our community, so we really don't have a community. We have the students, and then we have the summer people coming in. I want to keep our schools open and filled. I was at a forum at the town hall not recently, and someone spoke up about their wife being a teacher in the 4th grade. And looking at the amount of 4th grade classes that we're down to, our population for year-round residents in our schools is dwindling, and we need to change that. We can change that by being able to have housing be here year-round and build back our community. Our businesses will do just as well with a year-round community. As a matter of fact, I think they will thrive with it. So yes, I will. I've already voted for it. I'll vote for it again. Thank you.
Matt?
The reason the 3-student ordinance is important is because it sends the message that we're a town of families that we're a town of families living in neighborhoods, and that we have single residence homes, single family homes. That's why the 3-student ordinance is important. A second puzzle piece why it's important is that it takes down when there's the student partying and the numbers of students in the neighborhoods. It's not 5 and 6. Those neighborhoods that are having trouble, it's 3 instead of 5 or 6 students in that home. We are getting away from thinking of ourselves as a place where people live in homes, and we have these kind of rental empires taking over the town. And you need people who are going to be strong and stand up to these special interests, the out-of-state landlords. And I mentioned when the homestead was something people had waited for. People on the council in the early 2000s fought for it. They, Anne Marie Silvera and others, and they were stymied at the State House. So you need people who are going to work hard to get things done for the people of the town. Back to Providence, again, we waited on the 3-student, and the Providence ruling said that the 3-student was fine. So we had waited for that precedent to come through, and that actually went to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. And so we mirrored that. So, I know that the first time that this was stalled was because we were on Zoom, and this landlords made a concerted effort to flood the phone line so that we couldn't finish the hearing. And now I really don't know why it's stalled. I mean, the precedent is that it's in keeping with zoning law to have a restriction of 3 students. And so I'm frustrated. I think we need to really get more to the bottom of it. And if we have to, we'll have to appeal the ruling if it eventually is negative for the town. Thank you.
Lori?
So I'm on the opposite side of this. I don't believe that we should litigate and appeal. And clearly, some of the previous councilmen from not this council, but the previous council, felt that was their answer to everything. And it didn't cost any money because it's the town's money. And Jill and Matt argued they have no fiduciary responsibility to the town when they sit on the council. I believe that there's a middle ground here. I am not married to repealing the 3 unrelated. I believe the 3 and the 4 and short-term rentals and all sorts of things have to be revisited by all the stakeholders in the town. And I'm not here to tell you, what I'm going to do with the litigation. I think it's getting ahead of ourselves because we don't know if it's turned down, on what grounds, and if there's an easy fix for us to go forward with it, or if we have to start all over again. So I do also have to say that for someone sitting next to me saying they're the homestead exemption person, you did not vote for the homestead exemption. And Patrick Murray is no longer running for council, and he said this every time he sat next to you. So again, Matt, you did not vote for the homestead exemption, so that's not really fair to keep bringing up the homestead exemption. Thank you.
Okay, so I am in favor of the 3-student, 4 unrelated regulation. And I'm in favor of it for a different reason, because we need closure around here. It was a contentious issue. There was a lot of debate, people of good faith on both sides, but at some point a regulation has to be decided. It has to be clear, and the matter has to be decided. We can't put everything up every 2 years when there's a change in the council. So yes, I support it. I think Judge Taft-Carter is an impressive woman. Let's see what she says. Don't hit the panic button. Let's see what she rules. Responding to one thing Jill, I think, kind of suggested, I was as surprised as anybody. I was driving down the road and saw my name on some giant billboard. Now look, I'm a first-time candidate. I'll take any votes I can get. But I never responded to the questionnaire from the PAC. I told them I wouldn't accept money from them, and they offered it to me. But again, after knowing my positions, if they still want to vote for me, I'm delighted to have them, and I'm all for it. So thank you for pointing that out, Jill. My name's all over town now for free.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, question number 2. We're going to begin with Steve. The town still has a 4 unrelated person rental limit ordinance in place. Do you support enforcing it? Do you think it should be modified or eliminated?
Isn't that the same question?
No.
Now, this is four unrelated. This is specific. So once again, the town still has a four unrelated person rental limit ordinance in place. Do you support enforcing it? Do you think it should be modified or eliminated?
Thank you, Kevin, for the question. I do support the four unrelated ordinance, and I don't believe it needs to be modified at this time. Again, there's a long history with the four unrelated ordinance. Originally, the town had a three unrelated ordinance in the town. We had an ad hoc committee, and at that point, we were told to, going back on the history, that we needed to change the ordinance significantly to pass Supreme Court Justice muster. So we actually took the original three unrelated we had, went to four unrelated. We went to that and we were knocked down by our own judge, Judge DeCubulis. And actually, he's a lower court judge than and at the time, Mr. Fortunato back in the 90s had done it. So that's basically why we have the four. Originally, it was a three, but now that it's four, I do support it. And I don't believe it needs any modification outside of trying to be enforced. And it might be something like, maybe have four professionals living together or something like that. So I think it can, in the long run, if it's enforced correctly, it can be an asset to the town. Thank you.
Deb?
I think a little bit differently about this. I don't think this is a really well-written ordinance, and it has the potential for resulting in some unintended consequences. I'm not opposed to the idea of, the limitation, but I think the ordinance needs to be much more defined. One of the problems that I know that we have is what is unrelated. What does that mean? But actually, the building inspector today is enforcing that to the best of his ability and is using that in place of three students at the moment. So, to some extent, that is being that is in place. But I think the language could be a lot clearer, and I would love to see it take another look at it and modify it.
Thank you. Jill?
So I believe that the town can benefit from having both the three student and the four unrelated. And when this came to us in 2020, when we passed the three student, the town solicitors asked specifically for both ordinances to stay because they wanted to have the flexibility to be able to use it. In the example that Deb just mentioned, and I think Steve as well, to have young professionals in town, it'd be a great opportunity for people, especially now that people are working from home, if they want to be able to live in an area, or if they are gig workers in town that want to share a house with other roommates, this will be that flexibility for them to do that. And again, it's going to allow us to have that year-round living that we're looking for. So we can have young adults all share a house. Why not?
Thank you. Matt?
So the three student is more specific and easier to enforce. I would leave the four on the books, but the three students, the one we really should focus our energy on. It's the one we really waited for from a legal perspective. It's an easier definition. As one of the candidates just said, that there's issues with defining the unrelated. So again, I would leave it on the books, but I would make our focus on the three student. And talking about issues from the past, such as the homestead, which was one of the first pieces of the puzzle that was very pro-resident that I advocated for. This is where the details of politics and government can be boring for people, but the bottom line was you weren't at the State House fighting when the enabling legislation was hanging in the balance, Lori, for the homestead exemption. You weren't there when it came when we had a definition, when we had to define it. I wanted a simpler definition here, and I abstained on it. I knew it was going to pass, and I wanted a simpler definition to simply mirror the voter rolls. Again, very much in the weeds for everybody, and but in the end, it was hanging in the balance. It was delayed. The enabling legislation was delayed many times. And if I hadn't been up there with our state rep, then it wouldn't have happened in the first place. So it's easy. The sound bites are easy. And we've seen this from certain people, including Lori Kelly in the past. But government is a little harder, and you have to roll up your sleeves on the complex issues.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Lori, please.
Could you repeat the question? I think everyone's kind of gone off the rails.
The town still has a four unrelated person rental limit ordinance in place. Do you support enforcing it? Do you think it should be modified or eliminated?
So I have no objection to the 4 unrelated at this point in time, but I would have to reiterate that I think that, with the 4 unrelated, the 3 college students, the short-term rentals, all of that should be a unified policy by the town. So if that means we have to relook at it, we can relook at it. It's not, my agenda piece, quite frankly. I am disturbed sort of with the enforcement piece on this, because it's very easy for anyone to pass an ordinance, but if we're serious about enforcing it, we need to have staff and a mechanism to enforce it, which I know Deb said that that's going on now. I am really not aware of it, so I can't judge whether it's happening or not. I'm still hearing, sort of scuttlebutt that it's not being enforced properly. So that would be my outlook is, if you want to pass the ordinance, then you have to have the manpower behind it to enforce it. So that's where I stand.
Thanks, Lori. Bob?
I'll give you a minute and a half of your lives back. So I still support it, like I said the first time, and I would not seek to change it. I think having closure is important.
Thank you for that gift. So we're going to move to Deb now, and this is the last of the first round of 2-minute
Did I
response.
ever answer that one?
I'm sorry. I was,
That always happens at town council.
I know.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
That's
That's my
okay.
fault.
Yeah, no problem. But I'll also keep it short. Yes, I support the ordinance, and I believe enforcement is key. And we do have we have staff that will be enforcing it. One of the issues is, the registration form. So we're working on that. So that's my answer.
thank you, Eva. So we've heard from everyone now. So the next question starts, and this is the last of our first series of 2-minute responses. And we are starting with Deb, and it's the last one related to rental registration. So the fastest growing segment of rentals in Narragansett are short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are properties that are often booked through the internet and can be rented for as briefly as 1 night at a time. Town staff estimates the number of short-term rental units in town to be around 1,000. At a recent town council workshop, a separate policy for short-term rentals was reviewed. The policy limited short-term rentals to no fewer than 7 nights. It further limited the number of guests based on bedrooms and parking spaces. Do you support this policy? Do you favor a different policy or none at all?
Well, I was involved in this, so I support the policy, but I think it needs work. And so, I think 7 days makes sense in a town where we've had, as long as I've been alive, which is 68 years, we've had, weekly rentals in the summer that work just fine, and I think they still work just fine. So, and I also, again, what we hear from people in all of the neighborhoods, I mean, every neighborhood in this town has at least a few short-term rental properties. And they're not the same as generally the people who rent, on a weekly basis, a monthly, or even a whole summer basis, because this is really a summer issue more than any other thing. I also am willing to take a look at the issue of short-term rentals, meaning probably nothing less than 2 nights or 3 nights in the off-season, because people are inside. They can't be as disruptive as they would be in the summer. And for particularly some of the folks who live in town or have an intention to live here in the houses that they rent now, that they use that that methodology to avoid student rentals. So, there's a lot of parts to this. It's very complicated, and I believe that it needs more work.
Thank you. Jill?
So I attended the short-term rental format, the workshop, and the one thing that was easy to note, there were very few residents there. So I think that we would need to have another workshop that would be more open for the residents so that they could get their thoughts through. Now, the short-term rentals, Newport recently in Portsmouth came about having the 30-day policy. And when that happened, the investors that were primarily purchasing in those towns came and they found Narragansett to be an easy take because they didn't have any types of any reservations for amount of days. I don't know that 30 is a number. I certainly don't believe that one's a number, but we need to take a look at it. We need to have tourism. Tourism's important to our town, but we also need to make sure that we have neighborhoods again and that we can actually have people that know their next door neighbor's name. I don't know my next door neighbor. It's a house that was built for rentals. This past summer, every 2-3 days, there's new people. It's transient. It's loud. They come in and every single day is the first night being there. They're all happy. They're having the big party and then they leave. And then it's just like living it over and over again. And every single person in this town has on their deed the right for quiet enjoyment. And that's the right that we have in this town. And again, the short-term rentals, we need to figure out what is going to be the best number. Again, not 30, not 1, but there's some place in between that we can work with after we hear from the residents of this town and they have a voice, because we need to really look at not making our town a hotel.
I wanted to tackle this issue on my last term on the council, and I've been off for 2 years, so I don't have my heart set on a specific number. But as I said in my opening, I know that people are very frustrated with this issue. They're frustrated with the short-term rentals, and I think it's been more of an issue since the pandemic lockdown. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked at the numbers on it, but I haven't been living with the issue on a day-to-day basis in terms of being on the council. So again, I would support a limit, but I know 7 is being bandied about, or 30, but what I would like to do is similar to how we waited for that Supreme Court decision on the 3 student, what is working in other cities and towns on this issue and what's effective, and then go with that.
Okay, so I was also at the workshop, and I would say that there were a lot of residents there. There were residents who own property and rent it out. So when Jill says there weren't residents, there were a lot of residents there. Maybe not the residents that she's speaking to that opposed all rentals. I do think there were a lot of effective ideas, but I would think that the next step should be at least another 1 or 2 more workshops, because people in the community brought forth interesting ideas about how to regulate it. What we're seeing is, there were the 4 unrelated, the 3 student thing, and now it's the short-term rentals can be in every neighborhood. So a lot more people are being affected by it. There is the right for quiet enjoyment, but there is also the right for you to dispose of your property and to rent your property. If you go to Germany on, an exchange or something happens, you still have that right. So it's important that we examine all of the issues and come to an agreement. And I do believe more workshops would be the way to come to an agreement on this. As it stands right now, it seemed very punitive, and it was not coming from the people and engaging the people. It was kind of being pressed down from the administration, and I don't think that's the way to get consensus in the town. Thank you.
Yeah, I was at that workshop too, and I felt like a dog watching TV. It was the most complex, convoluted proposal I'd heard. You only could have related people in a bedroom and no parties, so you couldn't have a birthday party for your granddaughter. I'm like, it was a good idea to try to put something down and start the dialogue, but it collapsed under its own weight. Listen, I support maintaining our neighborhoods for the residents and limiting the number of people who come in on a short-term basis and have no stake in our town. I support that. I don't think, though, making it so miserable and onerous with so many rules and little tiny regulations is the answer. I think we need a couple of things. First, as many people say, we need the data. I didn't hear any data at that meeting. What is the 10-year trend? We all have anecdotes, we all have theories, we have suspicions, but there's no data behind it. I would like to get the data. To have a regulation that makes sense, it needs 3 components. It needs to be reasonably related to getting done what you want to do. Number 2, it has to be understandable. And number 3, it has to be enforceable. I don't think a 5-page document with all of these martinet rules is the answer. What I support, I think, although it's early, is if you really want to limit the number of rentals, grandfather in those who are currently here, and then say, guess what? We're going to have a limit on the number of rental licenses available in Narragansett. If it's one available and you want one, you can have it. If it's not, get on a waiting list and wait till one pops up. What that number is, we'll need some research and data, but that is simple and understandable. There's a limit, and this is not new. We do that with liquor licenses already. It's no different. We need to find the right number and keep it simple and enforceable. That's my view.
Thank you. Emma?
So this council tackled or tried to tackle a lot of very complex and very controversial issues. And I know that the short-term rental ordinance was one that was very important to a lot of residents, because I do hear from residents, and that was why I had volunteered to be on the subcommittee for, the group. It was Deb and myself, we both volunteered, and we had a group. I did a lot of research on this, and I did look at a lot of short-term rental ordinances, not just locally, through, just all throughout the United States. And we did get emails saying that this was the most restrictive one that that restrictive ordinance in Rhode Island. I don't believe that's true, because other municipalities have 30 days, 28 days. That day I looked at what Westerly had, because I was working at Westerly Hospital that day, and that was 28. So we came to a compromise, as a group, because I had actually proposed like a higher number. I had wanted to start off, 28 days and just discuss and come to what that actual number should be. Should it be 2 weeks? Should it be a week? And as a subgroup, we said, okay, we'll put forward 7 days. So that's how 7 days came to be. There were two ordinances, one that Mike had worked on, one that I had worked on. We melded them together. And it was just really, it was, I had to put it on the agenda, because when I put the agenda item on for a work session, I said that we would be discussing a short-term rental ordinance. So we had to have something to present. And I think that was a good starting point. And again, it's for community. We want year-round people in our community. It's for safety as well. And one of the things that did come up was the 7-day thing, that people couldn't rent for more than, that everybody had to rent for 7 days. That's not saying you have to rent for 7 days. That means that only like one group of people can rent within that 7-day period. So if you rent it for 3 days, fine, but you're not going to rent it to another group, because that's all about, it's transiency, Sorry, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, I do support the short-term rental ordinance. A little history on it. This is something the whole country has seen that's happened. It's a phenomenon throughout the whole country. It's the same story every time. It's actually changing the fabric of neighborhoods. And what happens is at a mouse click, everyone's in business. You can rent your property, you can rent your house. We have, sleeps 20, sleeps 25. So what we're seeing at a lot of these places is what you would see at an event center or a hotel or a hall or something like that. So you have no control over it. So these have to have some sort of rules. It's imperative. And the activity, sleeps 24, all kinds of numbers. And address the things that maybe make people feel a little uneasy if they see 3 and 4 different types of people coming in, different parties coming in. They don't live next to the Holiday Inn or some kind of boutique hotel. And a lot of times the rules aren't in there. There's no fire code in a lot of these places. There's no occupancy limit. So all of these things have to be vetted out. And I would say that you have to go after the things that would be of what the use is being. If you want to put 20 or 30 people in that, you have to go after those occupancy limits, hotels. I mean, we had a house in Eastwood Look back in June, and somebody, it looked like they rented 4 or 5 houses around one area. And every house, there must have been probably 1,000 people there with tents and everything else. So this isn't a normal use in the neighborhood. So, and I would say, if there's any adjustment to the ordinance, you have to go after the things that could be easily, I'll finish up. It could be easily enforced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So we're going to move into what we call semi-lightning round questions now. So it's not a hard yes or no. Certainly, if you'd like to have a sentence or two for context or background, feel free, but we would like you to move through it fairly quickly. And the first question starts with Jill. And the question is, overcrowding has been a long-standing complaint of beachgoers at the town beach annual survey that's taken. And the Recreation Advisory Board has recently recommended that a beach capacity study be undertaken to measure maximum capacity for the town beach. Do you support or oppose such a study?
I support it 100%. This has been something that we've been looking at as a town. What is the right number on the beach? During the pandemic, I know that the residents of the beach experienced the best beach season they've ever had because there was enough room for them to enjoy the beach. There was parking, and they could park after 5 o'clock at the beach.
Okay.
I want to emphasize that it's a town beach.
Thank you.
That public's allowed.
Thank you. Matt?
I support it.
Thank you. Lori?
I support studying the capacity of the beach. However, I want to state very strongly that Rhode Island's state law is that people have access to the waterways, and I believe that seriously. And to raise individual tickets to the beach during the pandemic, to even consider that, I would never have considered that. And thankfully, the council did not go along with that.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
You can't get hurt by having the facts, so
Exactly.
you can't get hurt. Oh, maybe it was on. I still can't get hurt by having facts. And so I support getting the data, and then what we do with it, I don't know, but I'd like to have it, yes.
Eva?
I would like to learn more about the study and what it entails, but I would be open to facts and data.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, I'd be open to it. It's good to have some metrics just to get an idea of, where we're at, what the high or the low is on it. So I do support it.
Thank you, Deb.
I would welcome some facts because I really think it's important to know exactly what we're working with as far as the beach is concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Next question for Matt. In the summers of 2020 and 2021, between the hours of 5 and 8 p.m., the north and south lots of Narragansett Town Beach were limited to town residents. During this past summer, residents and non-residents were allowed to park in both lots after 5 p.m. Would you support a policy to limit parking to Narragansett residents after 5 p.m.?
Yes.
No.
No.
Like the whole lot, both lots?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Like both lots? Are you talking about that? Because we had one lot that we allowed. So we kind of compromised at the last council. And when we, so I'd like to know more about the beach survey results. But I think you're talking about the parking lots after 5 be available only for?
Yes.
Okay.
North and south.
Okay. Well, I kind of like a little bit of being able to give others the opportunity to also be able to use our beach.
Steve?
I support it.
No,
Deb?
no.
I would support the south, but would allow the north to be open so we could have the food trucks and others could enjoy the beach.
That's what we have.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, we start with Lori. At present, only the town pension, zoning, and planning committee require members to be residents. Would you require Narragansett residency for all town committee members?
No, I would not require it. I believe that that could be a preference when you're judging whether people should be considered or not, or who's the front runner. But my understanding from going to several of these board and commission, annual meetings is that it's hard to get people to serve, and people go from one committee to another, and their spouses run other committees because there aren't that many people willing to commit the time to boards and commissions.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable having people who don't live here make for us on commissions. So yeah, I don't care how hard it is to get people. If it's better to have no one than people who don't live here.
Eva?
I mean, I would like to have residents. I know we've had difficulties with getting individuals to register for that, but I think there's a way to do outreach. And I think a lot of times people will do things if you ask. So when I first was on council, and I said, sometimes the best thing to do is ask somebody, will you serve on it? And that's what we'll respond to. So I go out and I try to get people. So residents, yes.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Yes, I do support the town residents, and if they can't find enough, you can always hold it in abeyance. and possibly readjust the committee. If, if one committee can't get 7 or 8 members, you put it, lower the amount. I'd rather see the full-time resident who lives here.
Thank
The
you, Deb.
committees. Thank you.
We had a pretty much a methodology where we would always select a resident if there was one available. But there are some people who, just to clarify something that Bob said, the people who do, fill out applications for these positions, they usually are homeowners in the town. It's not just, random people
Okay.
coming in and saying we want to join one. So there are times when it makes sense to bring somebody in. There are times when it doesn't, and we need to have that discretion.
Thank you. Okay. Jill?
I support having residents be on the committees and residents only. If we need to combine committees so that we can have enough people who actually want to serve their free time for town government, so be it, combine them.
Okay, Matt?
I support it.
Thank you. Okay, next.
For Bob, in a recent workshop with the town council and the planning board, there was an informal consensus that time-restricted parking should be implemented during the summer on portions of Ocean Road. Do you support or oppose such a parking policy?
Yeah, I support it. It's like the Hunger Games now. People get there as early as they can. They will not give up that spot no matter what. They'll cling to their car door to keep that spot. It's crazy. We need to have some limits on how long you can stay there. I support it.
Thanks, Bob. Eva?
I support it. We still need to do more work in understanding the parking issues. But yes, I would support.
Steve?
Yes, I do support it, and maybe with a study to try to find out, on the timing of it, what's the best time. But I do support it.
Deb?
Well, I'm not sure there was an informal consensus, but there were discussions with the planning board. The planning board was going back to provide additional information. We didn't have that yet, but I would support, I definitely believe we need to do something.
Jill?
I do support time limits on Ocean Road with a meterless system where residents could park for free, but
Right.
still within the system, within the time limit, and non-residents would have to pay.
Matt?
I'm going to say a few more things on this than the others. In my past campaigns, people voluntarily, when you're out on the trail, say they want the seawall to be open and they don't want meters on the seawall. So if that sentiment's changing in town, again, I said I wasn't on the last 2 years, that's fine. But at this point, I guess I'm in the minority on this one.
Laurie?
So my interpretation of the question was just for time limits, not for charging. And for time limits, I think that is something we should look at. I am not for charging on the seawall.
Okay, thank you. So the next question starts with Eva. And at the most recent town council was proactive in establishing new town committees, EDC, Coastal Access, and the IDEA Committee. Would you seek to eliminate any of the present committees or establish new ones?
I think we have a lot of committees. I don't know if I would look at establishing more. What I would like to see is the effectiveness of the current committees and what they bring forth to the council, or what is being discussed on the agenda. And if it really isn't effective, if we have the right group of individuals on there to make it an effective use of everyone's time.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
I think possibly we could look at a position of maybe consolidating several of them. I mean, some of them have a little bit of an overlap. And, I think the real issue is the rules set in the infancy of the committees and what kind of, actually authority they would have or don't have.
Deb?
Well, just to answer that, they don't have any authority. But I think we've done a really good job of cleaning up some issues with committees, boards, and commissions, and they are mostly full. And I think they're very engaged. I serve on 5 of them, so and I go to as many meetings, if not all of them, that I can. And I think they're pretty effective. So I'm fine with them.
Okay, thank you, Jill.
So committees are advisory in capacity.
Correct.
And I think it's a good idea to take a look at all committees from time to time to see how effective they are and make changes. As a matter of fact, a change was recently made by this council where they got rid of 2 of the affordable housing committees, changed it and combined it into one collaborative.
Thank you, Matt.
So the Economic Development Committee, when I first got elected to the council, was seeking to actually hire a full-time economic development coordinator, which we didn't need. That committee's been political. Back then, Glenn Hagopian put on a motion to try to disband it. It was disbanded later when it was political again regarding taxation issues. So, and most recently, many state officials told me the most embarrassing meeting they've seen was the meeting in which Paul Zonfrillo was removed as the EDC chair, and for political reasons. So that's a committee that has not worked historically.
Lori?
Yes, but back to the question. I do support the committees that we currently have. Narragansett has a highly educated population, and I believe one of the things that really helps the council is having strong committees that can go out and investigate things and come back and report and research policies for the town, and they are only advisory. So I support the current ones. I have nothing up my sleeve to create more committees, but who knows? If there's a new issue, I would support a new committee.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I don't have any hit list of committees I want to get rid of. So, however, if there are committees where people don't want to serve, as kind of referenced earlier on, maybe there's a problem with that committee. We should take a look at it and see why it is that no one wants to go near it. I also am kind of surprised that that was the most embarrassing meeting someone's ever seen. I've seen some buttes that go far beyond that meeting that are much more embarrassing for our town, if you know what I mean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the next question, starting with Steve. Often when residents attend town committee meetings, they are only able to review the agenda online, and they do not have access to any materials distributed to the members of the committee. Would you support a policy that requires all committees to distribute information that is provided to the committee members, similar to the packages now available online for town council meetings?
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, I actually do support that, strongly support that. I go to a lot of planning and zoning meetings, and a lot of times I'll have to, sometimes if you click on the website, it'll have a lot of background information for the town council meetings, and it doesn't have that for the agendas for a lot of the other meetings. So I definitely support that.
Was that the question?
Yes,
For committees, not for the town council?
it's for the committees.
Okay. People should have access to the information that's going to take place at meetings, so I don't have a huge problem with that, although I don't like paper. And so for me, I'd much rather have access online because paper is wasteful. So.
Thank you. Jill?
Access should be available online. In addition, I'd like to see both the planning board and the zoning board be televised.
I think for the decision-making committees, planning, zoning, and pension, because we have committees that are advisory and there's a lot of volunteers there, so I wouldn't require it for them. But for where decisions are being made, planning, zoning, and pension, then I would support it.
I fully support the transparency of all workings on commissions. I don't think it's onerous if there's going to be handouts or information presented to be posting that online, so I would fully support that.
No, I'm opposed to transparency. I think we ought to just shut everything down. No, of course, we should be transparent, but I'm not comfortable saying I guarantee every single document that everyone gets should automatically be made available. There may be a very good reason for privacy or other reasons, comp or who knows what. I'm just not comfortable saying 100% everything goes out to the public. So in general, I favor it, but for good cause, I could see not handing out some stuff.
Thanks, Bob. Eva?
I believe in transparency. I would like to see whatever information is available just for everyone to review at a time, and I do want to see them televised as well.
Thank you. We're going to return to the 2-minute maximum response question, and the first of that comes to Deb. And this was referenced earlier this evening. This election season, landlords have launched an organized effort to have students living in their properties in Narragansett for the academic year register in the upcoming election as Narragansett residents. This has proven successful in that hundreds of students have registered to vote here in the last week of eligibility. What are your initial thoughts? Is it good for democracy, good for the long-term interests of Narragansett?
Well, I think anybody who registers to vote, that's good for democracy. I'm not sure, I actually was not aware of this. So, I mean, I knew that it was possible, but I didn't know 400 students were registered. There's a big difference between registering and voting. And so I think if people want to register, they should register. They have every right to do so, and I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Jill.
They do have every right to do so, but I'm concerned about what it could have happened to the town because of that. When you have college students that are be making decisions that'll be affecting my families, my friends' rights in our town government, it is a little concerning. I did have a chance to speak with Eva today, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but she's posed a great question to the students who are registering to vote. What type of problems could this be? Should they be recipients of any type of grants or any type of scholarships? Because they're changing their residency. I understand that the landlords would like the students to vote because the landlords cannot vote, but I have to wonder, why, what is going on? Why are they being so incentivized to do so? What's in it for them? And, I don't know, but I think it's a question to ask.
Thank you, Matt.
A political action committee is a special interest. It's formed for that purpose. We PACs, they are across the country, and now we have one locally. Now we have one trying to influence the election, and it's a single issue. That's all that these people will vote on, the one issue that they're told to vote on, and then there will be nothing about the rest of town government, nothing about all the other issues facing the town. And so you have to tread very carefully when there's a PAC, a special interest group, and now the landlords aren't hiding it. They aren't hiding behind another issue and trying to influence policy. They literally are. They're coming out and they're saying, we want to register students so that some of the reforms don't go through and the 3-student ordinance gets repealed. Basically, that's what they want. So I'm very concerned about it, and it's a sad day actually for Narragansett that we even have it.
Lori?
So it is not a sad day when people register to vote. People who live here for 9 months of the year have the legal right to vote. And it doesn't matter whether I tell them to vote for whoever or register to vote or not. You have people on Facebook with their household registration in Florida telling people that under Rhode Island laws, even though you live less than 6 months, you can legally vote in Rhode Island. And no one seems to be concerned about that. If your issue is wrong, then you're concerned about registering people to vote. I welcome everyone to vote. You don't have to own property in Bonnet Shores to vote. We've just overturned that. And so, yes, I welcome everyone to register to vote. I see nothing nefarious about it.
Thank you, Bob.
I mean, I'm a little scared by the question. I mean, what would not registering to vote look like? What would we tell them? Sorry, you can't? Under what right would we be able to tell folks who are otherwise qualified, no, you can't vote, you can't register because we don't think we like the way you're going to vote? Are you kidding me? What happened to us here? Make the better case to the constituents. Make the better case. That's why we have elections. But don't try to predetermine the outcome by limiting who can vote, only those who will vote your way. Are you serious, folks? No, everyone who's licensed, who's authorized to register, I would encourage them to register and get involved in our community. So I guess I'm violently opposed to some of the positions I just heard, and I'm shocked by them.
Eva?
So I've been following this too. I was made aware that there was a big organized effort recently about students organizing, and there were some issues. We did have a lot of college students that came in opposition to, being on their names being on the rental registration form. And I know that there's a PAC that's working, I think it's a coordinated effort. So I did find out about that. It was a little bit. So I did. I am also concerned because you do have to live in the town, or you have to be registered for 30 days before you can vote at a municipal an election. I mean, you can vote anytime, but you know, for you to vote in the municipal election, like the town council race, is you have to have been there for 30 days, living there. So I've been on the phone with the Secretary of State's office only just to get the facts, because it is important, because if these students are registering to vote, and that's fine, I believe in democracy, you know, if it's for the right reasons, but you know, if they are jeopardizing their financial aid, that's a serious thing. So I wanted to make sure that that wasn't, you know, an issue. And I did talk to Kathy, you know, at town hall, and she had said that they were inundated with probably over 300 new voter applications, you know, at town hall on Friday. So they had to stay late, and that was actually, they would be able to vote because that was a 30 days. That 7th was the last day. And of those applicants or those registrations, there were only 230 that could be that were approved. The rest were denied because some of those students checked off that they're not residents. So there is a process. Again, it's just, you know, it's just unfortunate because, you know, in the end, you know, I did mention it to Jesse as well, and he said this election will tell us who controls the town: year-round residents or college students and our out-of-town property owners. And he pretty much succinctly said that. So I thought that was a great quote.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Dennis. I mean, you have to consider the source, right? Is it maybe illegal that people don't, you know, you can't stop people from registering to vote, but consider the source. We've just had a contentious town council meeting on the short-term rental ordinance when we had, you know, many students were worried about if they were going to be thrown out of their house. I mean, I actually asked one of the students while I was outside in the lobby, and I saw her reading from her email, and I said, you know, where did you write that? Where did you get that? They said they got it from their landlord, saying that they'd be thrown out of the house if the 3 student ordinance didn't get passed down. So, you know, I think you have to consider the source of why they're all, the students are registering to vote. I mean, they've been told a one-sided narrative of what's going to happen to them. And I think that really the true thing is the students are being used as pawns in this whole issue. That's really what's happening here, and it's disgraceful, totally disgraceful what's happened to our landlord community. I mean, look at it. That could change an election, you know? So, I mean, that's what I've been advocating for 20 years since I've been in this town and longer about, you know, when is the town going to take the town back and put some strict, balanced policies in to change it? And this is just one more example of what's happening. So I hope everybody understands what's against us. And, you know, we have this political pact now. Little old Narragansett has a political pact. Usually you hear about that in the presidential campaign. So, you know, it's very, very, very disturbing. And, you know, as far as them registering, you know, maybe there's no way to stop it, but consider the source of why they're registering. Thank you.
For Jill, the state-owned land in Galilee that is presently used for parking and is also the site of the shuttered Lighthouse Inn has been the subject of a great deal of attention this past year. Are you satisfied with the present arrangement? What is your vision for the best outcome for this land? And lastly, would you support or oppose using Narragansett funds in an effort to affect the outcome?
I feel the only way to start this out is to thank Eva for leading the charge on Galilee, because I served 4 years on the council. I never once spoke about how disgusting Galilee, the Lighthouse Inn, looks. So thank you for that, Eva. I think that the town needs to sit at the table with the state. It's a state-owned land. I would like to be able to, with the governor, whichever governor is elected, to be able to sit down, have the town manager, the town council be an active role. Now, the town really, we don't have any real say for what happens, but we should. As far as town money being spent, I think that needs to be out on a ballot for the town residents to decide how much money could be spent down there. But it shouldn't just be a parking lot. Our commercial fishermen are so important to our state and to our town. They need to be involved. And the one thing I will say is that to my knowledge, I don't know that their voice was heard as much as it possibly could have been with the discussions with the current town council and the state. But yes, I do believe that the town needs to have a seat at the table and work collaboratively with the state, and hopefully it'll be for the benefit for all.
Thank you. Matt?
The Dutch Inn issue, I served on the Galilee Advisory Committee for 8 years. And one thing that's been missing is the context and the history. And I think that's happening a lot on a lot of issues. So in 2017, there was a proposal that the Galilee Advisory Committee was presented with, which was worse than the proposal now, which was to raise RAZE to knock the whole thing down, and it was going to be all parking. It's going to be all parking. There were several meetings of Galilee Advisory Committee, and they took a strong stand and unanimously voted, we do not want an increase in parking at the old Dutch Inn site. And so with that strong message, I was able to advocate for the town, and with conversations with DEM, and people may remember our former police chief, Dean Hoxie, was at DEM at the time. He briefly served on the Galilee Advisory Committee. And what we eventually got in 2019 was a proposal for light commercial use, no expansion of parking. And that was voted on by, it's basically a small committee that only meets when there's changes for Galilee. It has 2 members of the town manager and the Galilee representative, which was me, and then the 2 DEM individuals. And this was the 2019 proposal. I actually was looking for this for quite some time. It was light commercial with no increase in parking. And my question on this whole issue is, we should go to Prakashanti and say, what happened to this plan? Because just so everyone understands, it's the property's in our town, the landowner is DEM, the state, and the tenant is Prakashanti. This was put forward by Prakashanti. It was ready to go to the State Properties Committee back in 2019. And then in 2020, after the election, a watered down proposal came forward, and then Eva was on the Galilee Advisory Committee and had to deal with that proposal. But remember, they started with wanting to knock the whole thing down and make it all parking. So again, I would say my question would be, what happened? Where is this?
Yes. So I think the number one issue in Galilee is we need to support the commercial fishing. We have a vital port, and I think that any redevelopment down there should be their input number one. I think that the way the RFP went with a bunch of different, what about this idea? What about that idea? Hey, I go to Mystic Seaport and Mystic Aquarium all the time. I would love to have that in Galilee. It's not going to happen. So let's get a clear vision of what we can do on that property in conjunction with the state, which is exactly right. We have to sit down like adults and negotiate our way into this, and then move forward with a clear vision. I would support something being on the ballot, and if it passes, I guarantee I would support the people. The people sitting next to me calling for a ballot did not support the people on 2016 ballot, and then again 2020. So again, putting it on the ballot and then enforcing it is important in your elected officials. Thank you.
Okay, well, I also want to thank Eva for her leadership on this. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and there was something, pardon the pun, something fishy about that deal, just from the outside looking in. It's been put on hold probably in large part because of the attention that's been drawn to it by Narragansett. But remember, it's not Narragansett's land at the end of the day. Narragansett seems more worried about this than our state representatives and our state senators do. I hear nothing from them about it, nothing effective. That's where we should be going. We can all have opinions, and we all think it's crazy to knock down Paradise and put up a parking lot, but but at the end of the day, it's not our land. We have a limited ability to affect the outcome. But our state reps, that's why we have them. Let's have them earn their money now and get on this issue.
Eva?
Okay, so I've been, since I got on council, this has been an issue that I've really been passionate about. And just to answer Matt's question, what happened with that proposal, I remember my first meeting, it was like right after I got sworn in on the council, and I said I'd be to the Galilee Advisory Committee. It was the lease committee, actually, and we had the meeting, and the excuse that they used was COVID. They supposedly had somebody that was, going to invest and do a nice restaurant, like the rendering that Matt just showed us, and they said, oh, COVID changed everything, so that was why. And then they were trying to show us that really awful little, Cumberland Farms looking thing that they were trying to pawn off. But what I believe this is it's a land use issue. It always has been. So I support land use policies that are consistent with our comprehensive master plan, and that's what we have to fight for. I ultimately would love to see in our vision in our Galilee Special District Plan come to fruition. I challenge the state's position that the state is immune to local zoning, and I would like to see more local enforcement to ensure landowners and leaseholders comply with the local zoning requirements outlined in the Galilee Special District Ordinance. Specifically, land side parcels on the southern end of Galilee solely used as surface parking do very little to support the fishing industry. Galilee is an important economic engine for the blue economy, and I am confident there is great potential to catalyze economic growth in fishing, water transportation, and recreation industries. The future of the former Lighthouse Inn site is complicated and may require the support of our state legislative delegation. And I would rather see the town council collect parking revenues on these parcels than private leaseholders until an appropriate land use strategy can be implemented. My efforts to highlight the current Lighthouse Inn leaseholders' dereliction and underutilization of this property resulted in the state reconsidering or delaying a long-term renewal with the current leaseholder. And what I would like to clarify, if I may, is the misinformation that's been out there. The $50+ million price tag, that was never going to be on the state, on the town. That was never meant to say, oh, the town is on the hook for $50 million, $50+ million. That was a concept. It was a conceptual rendering of what it could be there. That was going to be a private developer if they took on that. What the town was proposing was the TIF, a tax increment financing, which would be funded by and there'd be no risk to taxpayers. So remember, we're not really getting any tax revenue from the site right now. So that was for us to actually get money.
Thank you.
Thanks. Steve?
Thank you. I think there's enough ideas in that Galilee situation that I don't see why at this point now that everybody understands what's happening and, we kind of got everybody excited over it and, ready to get something done. I think now's the time to really dig in with all the stakeholders, review some of the policies that were from before, review the land use, keeping in character of the Galilee as it is, a fishing village, maybe not something too big or something too small, and certainly give a lot of consideration to the fishermen that are there. I would certainly support them. Thank you.
A couple of things. One I want to mention is that in the 2023 budget for the state, there's a $46 million price tag on funding various purposes in Galilee, and I marked down a little bit of that information. Investment in blue economy defined, and blue economy, by the way, is defined as the overall contribution of the oceans to economies, the need to address the environmental and ecological sustainability of oceans, and the ocean economy as a growth opportunity. 24 million of the 46 million is designated for replacing bulkheads and docks, raising bulkhead caps by an average of around 18 inches throughout the port to protect against sea level rise. Other projects include road improvements to roadway, stormwater mitigation, sidewalks and parking improvements, water line removal and replacement, new fire hydrants, electrical upgrades, installation of security cameras, and further replacement of docks. So there is work being done to support the fishermen of Narragansett. I just want to make that point. $46 million is nothing to sneeze at. However, there are issues, and Eva details them pretty extensively. We did send a letter. The town sent a letter to those parking organizations in the Port of Galilee to remind them of the Port of Galilee special district and the requirement for special use permits for any kind of construction, including parking. So, and right now, there's no long-term leases in place, so that's open. I do believe that we should, that the town should have an engagement with that. And so I think we're moving forward. I just don't think that we've gotten where we need to go. But I think your question was about should Narragansett, step forward to pay for some of this? And the answer is absolutely that we would need a ballot proposition for that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. So I have one more question, and then Kevin has one more question before we move toward candidate summary statements. So my question starts with Matt. So over the past 2 years, the town council has spent meaningful time addressing coastal access. While access points to the shoreline are well established, there has been a difference of opinion as to how much parking should be made available at these access points. What is your position on the issue of parking spaces for access points?
It should be done on a case-by-case basis, based on the neighborhood, based on the width of the streets in the neighborhood, based on how good of an access point it is. Some of the access points have a lot of barnacles and a lot of moss, and they're very dangerous. So we have a duty on these issues to actually learn more about them. And growing up by the water, I knew where a lot of the nearby access points were. I don't know where the access points are in Tiverton or Portsmouth, but I do know where they are in parts of the town, the public rights of way. So my view would be, you look at we're just a patchwork quilt of neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has its own unique identity and its own attributes. So I would look at each on a case-by-case basis with the neighborhood interests as the foremost in my mind.
Okay, Lori?
I strongly support coastal access, and with that comes parking. And I was at the workshops with, several of these meetings where they suggested there was a section in the, I'm losing the name of the streets, but Califan, that area. That area has had historically the same fights since 1971. I was looking through microfiche in the library for another area, and there were still people complaining about, kids coming down and surfing on that area. I believe that there is, again, the ability to sit at the table and come up with a compromise. It's not like 50 parking spots are going to fit there, but I think this council did a good job of moving forward, this current council, with let's look at some parking places and let's think about maybe timed parking places so that people in Narragansett and visitors can use the access points to fish or surf or recreate on the water. So that's my feeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, so I believe that we are stewards of the ocean. We've been given this tremendous gift. We don't own it, but we have the benefit of it year-round, and I believe in stewardship. I also believe in trying to be generous and setting a brand for our town, which is welcoming to people, not crabby, stay off my lawn sort of attitude, but welcoming within reason. Now, the people who pay for it, obviously, the residents get priority. They're paying for it, for crying out loud. But I don't want to have this nasty reputation that I think we could easily slip into. As far as parking, the last I heard, we paid $80,000 for some parking study by people who are experts. I've never seen that thing. I'm no parking expert, but someone who's getting paid 80 grand apparently is. Why don't we read that thing and see what they have come up with and what they recommend? That's where I'd start.
Thank you, Eva.
Yeah, so the coastal access points, we're talking about the avenues. I supported parking there. It's CRMC access points, and that differs from like what the neighborhoods have, or there's community access points or whatnot. But these were always public, and they were always accessed. And what we were trying to do as a council is protect that for generations to come. So we did actually. There was a motion on there that was approved, I believe unanimously, to get the study of those avenues and the parking there. And that's we've gotten that, and now we just need to study it and figure out what we're going to do with that. And again, it's an issue with encroachment. There's been a lot of encroachment by property owners on town land. So that really showcased that. So again, we're going to look at that. We're going to see where we go forward with that.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I agree with the access to the coastal areas and the rights of way. And, we're very fortunate to have many areas where there's plenty of parking. So it's really the parking issue. I think any type of new access points or any existing ones that maybe lend themselves a little better, maybe a little more parking than less, but I think that the character of the neighborhood is utmost and should be certainly considered as one of the main factors. Thank you.
Deb?
Eva's absolutely correct. The coastal access points that we're talking about are designated by the CRMC, and it's very easy to find them online if you want to see what they are. The issues that we have with parking is, and I agree with Lori as well. You can't have a coastal access point without a way to get there. And so I was very much in favor of when we put parking on on our agenda, and we talked about it, and we did compromise with that particular neighborhood to make sure that we only put parking in one place, that we limited the amount of time of day, and that we maintained parking away from any cross streets to ensure that that vehicles that needed to get through could get through. I go through there all the time. I go through a lot of the places where we have rights of way all the time just to see what's happening. Most of the folks use them to surf. That's what it's for, surfing. Surfing only happens when surf is up, and so it's a fairly limited amount of time that happens. The other thing is the study that Bob mentioned was actually a study to determine the rights of way on those streets to ensure that people weren't encroaching, as Eva had mentioned, into this space that actually belongs to the town of Narragansett, because that was an issue that the roads were too narrow. One of the reasons they were too narrow was because of encroachment. So it's kind of not a great move, because there's a lawsuit, and the lawsuit says that we had never even surveyed those areas, so we did, and that's what that study was for. So I'm absolutely in favor of access to coastal access points, because I think that we are lucky enough to live in paradise, and it's in our best interest to share it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
So I believe that Narragansett has more coastal access than most towns in South County. More beaches, more rights of way, certainly than South Kingstown does. But it is important to note the distinction with the Rhode Island Constitution that talks about access, which I believe is vitally important. It doesn't constitute parking. Now that becomes a problem when we have areas that in the avenues that there is a lawsuit going on. And Deb, you mentioned the surveys, but the town didn't survey those roads until after the lawsuit happened. There needs to be some type of compromise, but I am against going into an estate to build parking spaces for people not in a neighborhood to come. There has to be a way to be able to have the ability to park close by. Maybe some entrepreneur can come up with some type of a shuttle to bring people to go surf or to use the access points, but it should not be to break up a neighborhood to find parking for people who don't belong there. I don't know if any of the existing council members have seen, I know probably Matt saw the same videos that I did from the people from the avenues with the Ring doorbell videos that came from people that were coming into their neighborhood. It shows people changing, shows people just, disgusting, urinating in front of their houses because they want to go use the water, and the water should be an access point. They should have the right for it. However, the people that live in neighborhoods should not have to have, non-neighborly things happen in front of them.
Last question, beginning with Lori. Town water quality and quantity has become a critical issue for Narragansett. Narragansett has invoked a watering ban each summer for the last 5 years. What's your opinion of the state of our town's water and sewer infrastructure in Narragansett? And what are your plans for improving or ensuring that this part of our infrastructure remains resilient?
So I'm really happy to have this question, because I do think for my outlook is the next big things on our schedule for the town looking forward is water and sewer infrastructure. And it's going to be hugely expensive, and we're going to have to, make some concessions to finance this going forward. But I have never lived anywhere where you have houses on the water without sewers and no intention of building sewers. I remember bringing this up early on and having someone say, well, you don't know how expensive it is. Well, it's not going to get cheaper for the town or for the state or for the nation. So we need to do some examination on that. Also, water quality. There were, I think, 2 years during the pandemic where the south part of the town had violations on water quality. I guess it was nothing to worry about, but those reports were coming out regularly. And thirdly, I feel like the last 5 years, whether it's 5 years or 10 years that we've had water restrictions, we need to face that. And I think that there is coming a shortage for the entire country, maybe the entire world, on water. Water is a precious commodity. We have to look forward to what we can do. We live on the ocean. There is possibility of doing some sort of desalination plant, and I think that should be examined. Yes, it will be expensive. Yes, there are, byproducts that have to be used. It, oddly enough, creates brine, and we have brining trucks. But again, I don't know that that's the solution, but buying more water from our neighboring town is not going to be a long-term fix. It's going to be a short-term fix. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Bob?
So I'm in violent agreement with Lori. I actually looked at the video of this session from 2 years ago. And water and sewer was the top issue at that seminar 2 years ago. And we haven't made an awful lot of progress because it's hard and it's dull and it's expensive. There is some good news. The cavalry is arriving to some extent. We have the ARPA funds. There is investment, almost $3 million being made in the wastewater growing project and water system upgrades, which is, I think, a step in the right direction. But here's my view. I think it's disgusting that we have people with septic living next to the ocean. It's a crazy quilt where one house is on a sewer, two are not, the next one is. It makes no sense. Sooner or later, this is going to have to get fixed. It should be done on our watch. We should use our sterling bond rating to get this paid for at advantageous rates. But we need to do this not for us, but for our children and for our grandchildren. Because someone's going to have to do it. Why not us?
Thanks, Bob. Eva?
So I support continued investment for the reliability of our water and sewer systems. I will continue to support capital investments in our sewer and water treatment and distribution systems while balancing our conservation efforts. In the long term, we're going to have to consider regional water solutions to ensure a reliable supply of clean drinking water. I voted to use a big portion of our ARPA funding to the town to make water our most precious resource, a top priority, and also stormwater management and sea level rise are other important issues. And I feel it's essential that we plan for resiliency as we consider future developments in our community. Again, we voted for ARPA funding for water and sewer, so we definitely need, it is a top priority, and I know I hear all the time from residents and even with the water ban, so there needs to be some solution.
Steve?
Okay. The uniqueness of Narragansett being a coastal town with seasonal and tourist activity requires special consideration in terms of water quality, supply, and stormwater runoff. Careful oversight of development. And what I mean by development, the town needs to get ahead of the curve as far as what type of development, where's the next development going to be, things like that and whatnot. Water usage, water capacity, and coastal features must be thoroughly studied an overall plan as to sustain and improve the current situation. Metrics-based data usage of seasonal water supply, seasonal water usage, and coastal stormwater runoff should be included in any improvement plan. I would work with the town manager and his staff to understand what options Narragansett has as we must correct these problems. So to sum it up, I think we just got to get our hands around it a little better, the whole situation with the water quality and the sewer and whatnot. And then we can kind of, work it out from there. Thank you.
Deb?
I think Steve is right. We do have to get our hands around it. There's a couple of things that we have been working on. One, and probably the most important thing, this being an election year, is that there's a $20 million bond issue that's going to be on our ballot this November, and part of it is for infrastructure usage, particularly in relation to water and sewer. So I think it's important for people to engage in that. Another thing that we have done is we joined the Municipal Resilience Program, which is nicknamed Resilient Rhody, which is a comprehensive climate resilience action strategy which provides support for municipal resilience through training, vulnerability assessment, and participation, all this free, in the Community Resilience Building Program, which we joined late last year. Offered by a team from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank and the Nature Conservancy. There's also a federal infrastructure program that's being maintained through a variety of grants, and we're working on ensuring that we get involved in those grants. And the reason why I'm talking about infrastructure is because the infrastructure in Narragansett was built a long time ago. It was not built when many of the communities that came online were in existence, and it's in need of a tremendous amount of money. And it's not money that we're getting through the funding that we all do when we pay for water and sewer. So I think that's a really, really important fact. The other thing is that we have a limitation in the amount that we can raise taxes in a given year it's 4%. And I think a couple of people have said that, and that's absolutely true. I also think that we have to always consider conservation, and we, the town, has to do a much better job of explaining to the residents what conservation is and how they can be a part of this, because I think people will get on board if they understand what's going on. Water is a commodity. It is a precious commodity, and it is very, it's going to become limited and more limited as time goes by in the world. Thank you.
Jill?
So the question was on the water ban and the water quality in town. The water ban seems to be coming earlier and earlier each year. The water ban this year was maybe in July. And you can hear when I've been speaking with residents over the last month or so, this is probably the top complaint, no matter where you live in town. I always say that I can figure out where someone lives in town by the questions that they bring to you and the concerns that they have. But the water ban concern is a universal throughout the entire town. People in the north end, they know when Bonnet Shores gets busy with the vacationers because they can't use their water. It's just not there. And we see the people vacationing. I have a good friend who owns a cleaning business, and I had a drink and dinner with her the other day, and she was talking about the short-term rentals and how you might have a 5-bedroom house, but there may have been 20 people staying there. And, everybody that comes here loves our cute coastal community, and there's nothing better than after the day at the beach to go take an outdoor shower. But they're also taking a shower in the morning, and they're using the water. They're using our precious water, and the town residents are getting gypped at that. The other thing that I found, and I wish that the town council had done differently this year, was when the water ban did come, the water was turned off at the town beach. The water still flowed at the state beaches, also in town of Narragansett. So that I found a little bit ironic, and I just wish that they had done something a little bit different. But it sounds like we're all in agreement. I know Matt hasn't spoken yet, but I think everybody is in agreement on this one, that this needs a lot of attention. I thank you for going in.
So the strain on the water and the sewer infrastructure that we have in the town is because we were designed as a small town, a small municipality, and we have an influx of people who come in. More than that, this is related to the issues of the 3-student rental. This is related to the influx of short-term rentals, and especially since the pandemic. And my answer in the paper on this was very brief, but it basically was, it's a small town with the bandwidth that we have for sewer and water is we've got to that's part. It's related to this influx, right? Because we're not encouraging young families to be here, and we're not encouraging yearly rentals as opposed to seasonal rentals. And former town staff have had the conversation with me. They're like, this is part of the problem, is that the strain on this system is related to that. And then we've got I mean, here we are, that we've got this landlord pack that's out there and they don't care, right? People who don't live and work and breathe in the town aren't going to care. They want to have their moment in the sun, and they'll use as much as they can, and then they go away. I mean, and there's a constituent who wrote a great email about it years ago, we were arguing about the forced unrelated ordinance. And so that is the concern that I have. These issues are related. And so that's why the council has fought for making us more of a friendly to young families, where we have long-term rentals and people who are, it's a small seaside town, right? It's not a place for us to just overuse our sewer and water.
Thank you. So that concludes the questions that we have. We'd like to turn now to the candidate summary, and it's going to be a 2-minute maximum. We're going to start with Eva. And to the extent that you can really tell the audience and people on YouTube why you're running, why you are looking to be elected, if that can be a core of what you're discussing, that would be terrific.
Great. Okay. Well, I've put a lot into serving the on this council, and I'm running again to build on the work that we've done on the current council. I would like to continue working on protecting our neighborhoods with regulations for investor-owned 3-student ordinance, bulk zoning, and short-term rentals, which we've been working on. We've also competitively bid and lower electricity rates for the community aggregation program, which I'm proud of, and that's coming, next year. And then we promoted resiliency plans for Harbor Island, which is going to support the Causeway project, which is really important. Completing the construction of the library, and then also recommending prioritizing ARPA funds for essential infrastructure projects, such as bolstering our water supply system, as we just discussed. And just protecting designated coastal access points from encroachment from abutting properties. And I also want to continue to be a moderate voice of reason on the council who listens first to the interests of voters who live in our town. I really want to continue to fight for Galilee. And I do a lot of behind the scenes work which people do not see a lot of. And I'm constantly always working and fighting for the town. This election is likely going to be about the housing policy. Investor owners, including many who do not live in town, have organized, as we discussed, to vigorously fight our policies that are designed to protect and stabilize our neighborhoods. Specifically, out-of-town investors created a PAC, and they're working to install council members who will roll back the 3-student ordinance, roll back the bulk zoning, and fight to have no regulations for short-term rentals. I'll promote common sense housing policies that bring balance and a focus to protect the interests of those who live and vote here. I want to see Narragansett be affordable to families and to see families with school-aged children continue to call Narragansett home. I bring forth a practical and pragmatic approach to decision-making. I listen first, do my research, and then I make the best decision for the residents in the town. Many issues we dealt with this year were challenging. Trying to find the solutions that work for everyone is an important aspect of my decision-making. I ask for your support and your vote on November 8th or before so that I can continue to serve the residents and the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Thanks, Dennis. I believe my candidacy is all about the quality of life in Narragansett. Those of you who know me, you can see me at council meetings. I'm continuing lobbying for a better quality of life for the residents in town. And right now we're at a tipping point. We have an imbalance in town. We can see in my neighborhood alone in Eastwood, I can see more and more full-time people moving out. We've had issues about the short-term rentals. And it's going to take a while to combat these. They've been 20 and 30 years in the making. So now it's getting to the point where, what is our town going to look like in another 10 or 20 years? Can our families afford to even buy another house in here with the investor-driven property so heavily weighing on the pricing? They can afford to pay a lot more for the house when they're getting so much money for rent. And they know all the answers. They have all the details about, the renting and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a critical point, is the quality of life. And striking a balance. No one's saying that to prevent all student rental. We just want to live with a reasonable amount of students in our neighborhood so each house doesn't become a dormitory. The 3-student policy will start to help that. I notice it in my neighborhood now. There's some houses that did rent to 3. It's a little quieter. There's less vehicles. So that's a key point. I would continue with the bulk zoning. I think it's very imperative that a lot of the reason why we got here is because a lot of our zoning wasn't up to date, and we had a lot of smaller areas. So I'll close on my striking points that, and this is in my flyers, I can protect and preserve residents' quality of life. We need family-friendly neighborhoods that are safe and stable. We need planning and zoning policies that create sustainability for full-time residents. We need to strengthen and maintain the fishing village of Galilee, and maintain sensible town budgets and fiscal responsibility, maintain educational and senior services, and please consider me on Tuesday, November 8th. I'm number one in the ballot position, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Deb?
I think I preempted this by telling you the things that I wanted to continue to work on before, but I'll reiterate them. One was climate mitigation, including water and sewer infrastructure improvements, completing the community choice aggregation project, which Evan mentioned, to provide more renewable energy to our electrical grid, identify solutions to mitigate the issue of migrating sand on the town beach, and all other issues related to the beach that need to be maintained and managed. The completion of the library project and working toward resolution of Galilee issues. I'd also like to point out that I strongly believe in civil discourse and try very hard to be as respectful in all my endeavors as I was raised to be. I think it's important to continue that as we have throughout this entire past 2 years on this council. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I make a mistake, but my intentions are always positive. If you want to learn more about me, I have a website, debnarragansett.com. I'd like to thank a lot of people. I'd like to thank my family, my colleagues, and all the folks who run for office. The most compelling lesson I've learned in the past 2 years is just how much hard work and time goes into preparation, presentation at town council meetings, and follow-up after the meetings are over. Anyone who does this must have a strong interest in public service, and I applaud the people sharing this process with me for their engagement in that work. I'd also like to thank all of you for coming out to see the democratic process live, and to the NPRA, wait, I hate those initials, for holding this forum. Have a great night.
Thank you. Jill?
Thank you again to the Narragansett Peer Association for hosting this. It was sad to hear that the League of Women Voters didn't have enough women power or manpower to be able to host an event. So thank you for stepping up and doing it. It's important for the voters of the town to hear what people running for council think. And I'm glad for the other 7 running that were here tonight to answer these very important questions. I will be running again. I've already served 2 terms on the council, and I'm seeking another. The things that I find vitally important, other than what I've already spoken about with the short-term rentals, which I believe we've already seen in other towns and cities around the country, by actually enforcing policies for the short-term rentals, we are seeing fewer of the, we're seeing homes that are put up for sale by investors and becoming more of year-round, whether they're year-round rentals or they're families that can move into town. I want to make sure that we can continue to fully fund our schools. The last thing that we need is to have our town become a ghost town that only has people in the summer and then the students in the winter. And we wouldn't need schools at that point. We need to have a community. We need to have a community. We need to make sure that we can resolve our sewer and water issues. We need to fix our roads. I don't know how many of you are happy with your road. I go down my parents' road all the time, and it's not fun. We need to make sure that we can also fully fund our police and our fire. And with that, I want to just take the opportunity to thank them. Over the last few years with 2020 and what has gone on, our fire and our police have done beyond what we've asked them to do in keeping our town safe. And I just want to thank them for that and for their continued work.
Thank you, Jill. Matt?
Thank you to the Peer Residents Association for hosting this event, and to Dennis and Kevin for your efforts. Recently, and especially since the pandemic lockdown, we've seen an onslaught of outsiders coming into Narragansett, and I know people can feel this change in the town in their gut. For us to thrive and survive, we need to make sure Narragansett remains a small seaside town with year-round families and year-round residents. It cannot be sold to out-of-state landlords, and we know that we've been talking about that PAC that has inserted itself into this race, and the PAC-based candidates to my left. They're not going to prioritize Narragansett's families and incentivize year-round rentals. Inflation and gas prices are on the rise across the country. That's why fiscal responsibility cannot just be a catchphrase, but something that's achieved by people who scrutinize budgets and ensure that taxes remain low. There's going to be no COVID relief money to hide budget gaps in next year's budget. So the town is going to need someone who has been a jog for the taxpayers, both in Narragansett during my 4 terms on the council, and before that, during my. That's why I actually chose to run. That's why, and that's why. Here in the pier, the beach kind of symbolizes all the conflicts that have characterized the past few years. It's a town beach. Our beach is a town beach, and it is there for Narragansett's townspeople to enjoy primarily. That's the mindset that needs to guide us in the years ahead. And remember, that's our town we need to protect and put our Narragansett families first. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Lori?
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight, and I'm going to do a little bit of the introduction, which I skipped over at the beginning, is that most of you know me from the library board. I'm not going to talk about my high school or college education, but I have actually done work in the community over the years. I have proven with the library advocates, which was hundreds of people that were involved and 70% of the people voting in 2016 and 2020, that yes, we can improve the infrastructure in the town by working cooperatively with the state. And as you know, we have a $5.8 million bond out, but the state is going to repay $3.14 million of that. That is not due to the people sitting to my right who lost $400,000 in state aid, operating aid to the library. When they say fiscal responsibility, be careful, because whether you vote for it or whether they wherever they're trying to save money, all projects are open for them because they do not respond to the people in voting of Narragansett, the voters of Narragansett rather. My projects would be, as I said, infrastructure, the sewer quality, the quality of water, and the supply of water. Also, I think that whoever the council should set priorities at the beginning of the term so that we have an agreement as to what projects we're going to go for. I believe strongly in coastal access and the bike path, which is the only other project that has been on the works longer than the library project. So I am committed to seeing that finish at the town beach. And yes, the town beach is for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Bob?
Let me talk to my friends at home. Thank you for persevering. And for those who are going to watch this, hopefully later on tape, and also for all of you, you're at the home stretch, and I think you've learned I'm pretty quick. Unlike Steve, I drew the worst spot on this ballot. I'm number 10 of 10. Can you imagine? So if you're inclined to vote for me, you're going to have to read through all of the names. And the question I'm going to ask all of you, my friends, is this. All of the questions we responded to tonight are the known issues. I was relieved. There were no surprises. And we all had answers that I have to say were pretty much the same. Some variances, but pretty much the same. So we all know what the known issues are, but when you go to vote on November 8th or before, consider this. What about the things we don't know that will pop up? And they will pop up. Who on this panel do you think would do a good job for you? Who has the background and the experience and the temperament and the independence to come and work for you? I believe I am among the people who would do that. And I hope that you'll think so too. And if you do feel that way, please vote for me either early or on November 8th. Thank you all.
So I would also like to thank the audience that came tonight, the audience that is watching on YouTube, and also my fellow board members who are not up here but playing a major role in making this all come together and work. Most of all, I think everyone, even though we haven't been on a town council, we understand it's really, really hard to run for town council, and then it's really, really hard to actually be on the town council and do the work that's necessary to support the town. So I would like to end with a round of applause for the candidates that came tonight, and thank you very much. And good night, everyone. Thank you.